Hello, welcome back. Today I'm posting what I hope will be a short video about some common questions about COVID-19, and in particular, how did it get rolling? How did we get where we are today, and what might we do now? What are our steps we can do to deal with this? So I wanted to point out that as of today, there are something like 74,000 cases in the four European countries with the highest number: Italy, Spain, Germany, and France. The U.S. has another 10,000 cases. The number of cases outside of China is growing rapidly and is dwarfing what we saw in China. We're also seeing higher mortality outside of China. Italy has 35,000 cases today versus China's 80,000. Italy has 3,000 deaths. Sorry, I just rubbed my nose. China has 3,100. So that's a much higher case fatality ratio. So what do we know about this? The very first World Health Organization report came out on the 21st of January. That's just not even 2 months ago. So 2 months ago, this was just being discussed on the world stage. At the time, we had a couple dozen cases reported in Wuhan, and in mid-January, we started to see spread outside of China. On the 13th was the first case in Thailand, the 15th, the first case in Japan, and on the 20th, the first case in South Korea. I'll also point out that on the 12th, China had sequenced the genetic material of this new virus and had made it available to other countries for use in developing diagnostic kits. So that is a really important milestone. So in their summary for 21st of January for their first report, they said there were 282 confirmed cases and 6 deaths. And then they talked about the fact that within Wuhan, China, there were actually quite a number of critically ill or severely ill patients. So now we're jumping ahead a week to Situation Report 8 that came out every day. And globally, we have about 5,000 cases. That's a lot. More importantly, we've now seen 56 confirmed cases outside of China on 14 countries. So we went from, I think, 4 cases in 3 countries to 56 cases in 14 countries in a matter of 1 week. At this point, the health assessment from World Health Organization still put the risk at high at the regional and global level, not very high like was in China. And I think maybe at that time we should have been more concerned about the regional and global spread. Now I'm skipping ahead about 2 weeks to report number 23. What I have in this orange part is the report number 8 I was just showing you, and this is the report that came out on the report number 23. We went globally from 5,000 cases to about 50,000. That's like a 10 times increase. China had seen about a 10 times increase in severe cases and a 10 times increase in deaths. And we had about 10 times as many cases. And we had gone from 14 countries to 24, and we already recorded our first death. So that's a really significant change. But at that point, the World Health Organization still did not raise their threat assessment. So now we're jumping ahead 2 more weeks. This is now February 26th. So this is about 3 weeks ago, very close to 3 weeks ago. Globally, there are now 80,000 cases. That's a significant increase from the 45,000 we saw 14 days earlier, but it's not a tenfold increase. It's now about twice. Here's what's interesting. The number of cases and deaths was increasing in China at a rate of about 2 or 3-fold. But outside of China, we went from 450 cases to 3,000, from 1 death to 43, from 24 countries to 37. So the spread seems to be worse, much worse outside of China than inside of China at this point. On February 28th, then, which I think was 2 days later, the World Health Organization finally raised their global assessment threat to very high 3 weeks ago. Now let's look at the map that came out in that assessment report. We had, of course, a large number of infections in China. That's this blow-up box. But we had cases all throughout Europe and the Middle East. Iran and Italy were already becoming quite heavy in terms of the number of cases. We have at least 3 countries in Africa. We have the United States and Canada and Brazil with cases. So I believe at that point, the only continent that did not have confirmed cases was Antarctica. So at that point, they declared the risk very high, but still refrained from using the word pandemic. That came, I think, about 2 weeks later. So this thing spread very, very quickly, and I think it took us all a while to catch on to how quickly and how dangerous this thing was. So what are the common questions that I see a lot? One is, how does it spread? The most common form of spread is through droplets. So when you cough or sneeze, you sneeze out little particles of water, droplets, very small, that have virus particles in them if you have the disease. And this can happen before you show symptoms. And some people may never really show significant symptoms and still be able to be infectious. So that's problematic. So if you're in a enclosed space with someone who coughs a bunch of times and has the virus particle or sneezes, you're at pretty higher risk. It can also live on surfaces. So, if I sneeze on my computer, it's on my computer. I could get it on my hands. I could rub it on the door when I leave, and you could have some virus particles on the door. It does live on surfaces for several days. It can live in the air for a little while as well. But probably the primary form of infection is directly from droplets that you would breathe in. The secondary would be through surfaces. How many people will it affect? Well, the models suggest, since none of us are immune to this, and it's growing wildly, quickly, that 30 to 70% of the world's population could get this in 12 months. So we could have billions of people that all get this disease in the next 12 months, billions. For those who remember Carl Sagan, billions and billions. How does it attack us? It attacks us through the lungs. That's where the infection really causes problems. It causes pneumonia in our both, usually bilateral, I think it's called, where it's both lobes. And then it can lead to respiratory distress and organ failure and so forth. Is this virus deadly? Yes. It's not a death sentence, but it's deadly. 80% of us will get a mild illness. Some of us might not even know we have it. The other 20% will get an illness that ranges from a very bad viral illness where you could feel terrible for a week or 2 weeks to something that requires hospitalization. Mortality rate depends on a lot of things, one of which is age. The older we are, the more likely we are to get a serious or life-threatening condition. It depends on other conditions we have, like diabetes or heart disease or things like that, immunocompromised individuals. And partly that's also related to age. So those two things are intertwined. And it also depends on access to medical care. 8, 10, 12% of the people that get this might require hospitalization, and they may require supplemental oxygen and other forms of treatment. If they don't get those, it may be much more deadly. So access to medical care is one of the things that's keeping the fatality ratio, the case fatality ratio at 3 or 4 or 5%. It would be higher if we didn't have that. Should you get the flu vaccine? Maybe, but probably not for the reasons you think. It's still influenza season, so you could conceivably get influenza and COVID-19 at the same time, and I would suspect that would make it much harder on your body to fight off both infections. We're getting toward the end of the flu vaccine season, and people are being told to stay indoors. I'm not sure you can or should get the flu vaccine now, but it was actually a good idea months ago to get the flu vaccine because it would at least avoid you having the more common flu and COVID-19 at the same time. Should you get the pneumonia vaccine or the answer, did I spell that right? I can't tell. The answer is no, it won't help. You will get pneumonia, You might get pneumonia if you get COVID-19, but it's through this particular process with this novel coronavirus, not through any other pathways. So these other ways to prevent pneumonia from other more common pathogens, stopping those won't matter because those are not what's causing this particular pneumonia. So no, it won't help you at all. What should you do? Number one, stay informed. This epidemic has changed the world in 3 weeks. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. And I don't know what next week will bring. I don't think any of us do. So stay informed every day. Stay away from other people, particularly inside enclosed spaces. Crowded places where there's lots of people are going to be problematic. I know there's been some debate about whether it's safe to go to the gym if you wipe down equipment and if you're careful not to get near other people and so forth. I would stay away. I would stay away from any of those places. I would go grocery shopping when I needed to, but it's maybe only 1 or 2 times a week if I can get away with it. I would go to the drugstore if I needed to, and other than that, I would stay at home making videos. Wash your hands. The virus lives on surfaces. That's probably the second most common way you could get it. And it's not coming through your hands. It's coming through your mouth and your nose and your eyes. So like me, when I get tired of my eyes, and I go, God, what a hard day it's been. And what did I just do? I just rubbed, if I had virus particles on my hand, I rubbed them all over my mucous membranes, and that could be trouble. So 2 ways you can avoid that. One is don't touch your face, and the other is wash your hands. And if you can't wash your hands because there's no soap and water nearby, if you have some form of disinfectant, great. What about masks? That's a really complicated question because they probably don't help you at all. There is some possibility they might provide some protection, but more importantly, we need masks in operating rooms. We need masks with our first responders. And so they probably don't help us. They might help fractionally, but they make a huge difference to our first responders and to our medical personnel. So I think we should please not hoard masks in the hope that we're going to save ourselves, because we may in fact hurt many other people, and that may in fact increase our risk much more. Because the big risk comes from the spread of this virus. It's spreading very, very fast. We have to slow that down. Your highest risk is that you're going to get this disease and get a severe form when your medical system and your location is overwhelmed. If that happens, the chances of it being very dangerous to you is much higher. So we all need to slow it down because we'll all benefit from not overwhelming our medical system. And if we can do that, we can keep the case fatality ratio down to something, 3, 4, 5%. That's still terrible. I'm not saying that's great, but that's a lot better than 10 or 12% if we have people that could have been sort of supported medically that can't get access to medical care. So that's our primary job right now as people. Help slow it down. Stay away, stay inside, listen to your public health authorities. Thank you.